All right. Welcome back into the show. And let's get right back into it. College football week 3. I'm going to center on this one a little more talking about it. So I was in West Lafayette for the weekend, and overall with this college football slate, it wasn't actually the greatest slate in the world, but it was cool to be in that environment to start. But holy cow, that game was just flat out a domination, like an unbelievable domination. Going into this game, I was like, man, like I'm so excited to see a legit team in Notre Dame coming to Purdue. I circled it before the season and was like, okay, Notre Dame is one of my teams. Okay. And last week, I'm going into it, and I talked about it after the first week when I was like, Notre Dame could be legit, they could be a playoff team, blah 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 blah, and then they lose to Northern Illinois, and now like I'm thinking about it all week, and I'm just like, man, I have no idea what to think of this Notre Dame team at all. Like I just don't know. And it seems like like they have to run the table in order to make the playoff and do all this stuff. And I'm going into this Purdue game. I'm driving up to West Lafayette, and I'm just like, I have no idea what to think of this Notre Dame team at all. And holy cow, they proved to me that they're super legit and absolutely dominated this game. 66-7 was the final, and this is the biggest blowout I've ever been to. I mean, they just dominated this game. Riley Leonard just was insane. He only played the first half. He was 11 of 16, 112 yards, and ran the ball all over them. He had 11 carries for 100 yards and 3 rushing touchdowns. And Jeremiah Love, 10 carries, 109, a rushing touchdown. Like, they were insane. They just dominated this game. And, I really felt bad for Hudson Card in this scenario. He had no time. He had no time in the pocket. And Notre Dame's defensive line just was on him right away, and he had no chance. And, he made like one mistake in this game, which was trying to loft that little pass, and then Notre Dame picked it off, and we're up 35-0. And then they punt it with like a minute left in the first half, and then Notre Dame gives one ball to Jeremiah Love, and Jeremiah Love runs for like a 75-yard touchdown. It was just insane watching the flat-out domination that Notre Dame had. They just dominated this game. And if you're a Purdue fan, like, you're just like, oh my gosh, like, we might not win a game the rest of the year. And guess what? You're pretty much right. Looking at their schedule, it doesn't really look great. And I think also if you're a Purdue fan, like, you should be like, hey, this might be a good thing because this new coach clearly isn't working out. First year, you're not great. You're not doing that stuff. But then this is your biggest loss in the history of your program right here. And it's a home game against Notre Dame, one of your rivals. This is just a horrible look. And I really think like this Purdue team might be like 2-11, and it might be a really, really rough year for the Boilermakers. But Notre Dame here, this is the predicament. Like, I still don't know if they're going to be legit into a college football playoff team. I really don't know. Now you're sitting at 2-1. You lost to Northern Illinois. And you're looking at this, like, you get Louisville at home here, you get Florida State at home. The Florida State was supposed to be a good game. I guess it's not anymore. And then that last game you got at USC. That's probably your biggest game, right? I feel like you got to just win out. I don't see any losses that can happen here because you don't get an automatic qualifier because you're not an ACC affiliate. I feel like they got to win out here. And the Texas A&M win was a great win. They went into Florida and won that game as well, Texas A&M this week. So looking at Notre Dame, man, it's just tricky because they can have this week, then they can have the week they had in Northern Illinois. That was just frustrating to me because like I circled that game and was like, gosh, this could be a dominant playoff team, going into Purdue, a tough environment. And then it just turned out to be that. And like, I still don't know what to make of Notre Dame. So just a little bit frustrating on my end. But looking at some of the 12 o'clock games here, Alabama dominated Wisconsin. They went in there and flat out smoked them. Tyler Van Dyke got hurt at the beginning of the game, tore his ACL. It's going to be a tough look for Wisconsin here. Like, losing quarterback like that, he's the guy that He's supposed to be the story here, and now you're going to USC next week. It's going to be tricky, or in 2 weeks. Sorry, they have a bye next week, but it's going to be tough for them. I really don't see Wisconsin doing much this year, but this shows you what Alabama is doing right now. Like, they're dominating here, and they're looking really, really good doing it. They get Georgia in 2 weeks. They get a bye, and then they got Georgia at home, and that's going to be such a sensational game. I'm really, really looking forward to that one. Bama just looks really, really good, and we'll get into Georgia later. As it comes. So, I mean, it's definitely going to be interesting. Looking at some of the other 12 o'clocks, Missouri, Boston College. This one was very, very close, and Boston College is scaring some teams. They look really good with Bill O'Brien, and their quarterback Castellanos, he's really good. He was there last year, and I remember covering them after they almost beat Florida State in that last year's game. He's a really good quarterback, and he can scare some teams. If they didn't turn the ball over as much, like, Boston College might have snuck out of this game. And Missouri is a really, really good team. They're going to be scary throughout. Boston College is a good win here. They get Vandy next week, and then they got Texas A&M on the road. Some of their other tough games, Alabama on the road, Oklahoma at home. They got a little bit of a lighter schedule on the SEC end, but overall here, like, I'm pretty impressed with what I've seen from Missouri with Cook. Cook's going to be a pretty good quarterback to deal with. So overall, Missouri, I'm impressed with there. Oregon State. I told you guys about Oregon. They were going to wake up, and boy, oh boy, did they wake up in this game. Like, Dylan Gabriel flat out dominated this game, and I could really tell, like, hey, like, this Oregon team still has got something. Dylan Gabriel, 20 of 24, 291, 2 touchdowns, and I'm still pretty confident with them winning the Big Ten. Their ranking went down. Everybody started doubting them, and I was just like, hey, like, Boise's a legit. They didn't wake up for Idaho, and that's how you solidify yourself. It's like, oh gosh, like, we didn't step up in these 2 games, and now we get a road game against one of our biggest rivals. Like, we're going to show out, and they did. It was a flat out domination, 49-14 in this game. And I mean, they got some games coming up. Like, you go to UCLA in 2 weeks, which will be an insane game. UCLA did just lose to Indiana, but I mean, these are 2 teams from Pac-12, so, like, there's going to be some Pac-12 animosity going at each other, and then they get Michigan State at home after that, and then Ohio State comes into town. So I'm really excited for some of those games. It's going to be really, really interesting looking at those. Okay, Oklahoma Tulane here. This was one of the 3:30 games. Oklahoma looked okay. Tulane really kind of kept it close, which you kind of expected. Jackson Arnold can really have some moments, man. He's an awesome quarterback, but he didn't have a great game in this one. 169, a touchdown, interception. His running was really the key here. 97 yards rushing, 2 rushing touchdowns. He really stepped up there. And they're going to be a scary team in the SEC. Like, I don't think it's anything crazy. Like, they're not Tennessee level, which I'll probably get into Tennessee later. But overall, like, I'm excited to see what Oklahoma can bring as it continues. Okay. Let's talk about Utah State here. Utah's backup quarterback is Isaac Wilson, who is Zach Wilson's younger brother. He looked pretty good in this game. He went into a tough environment, which is Utah State, and really showed out. He had 239, 3 touchdowns, an interception, and I love how they used a running attack. And that's kind of what you need to do with a new quarterback. But they still used him a decent amount with 33 passing attempts, which is really, really good from Utah's perspective. They were running Micah Bernard, who had 17 carries, 123. They were running Mike Mitchell, 14 carries, 75 yards. And Utah, I mean, it sucks that Cam Rising is going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks, but overall, I'm still pretty confident that Utah can get out of the Big 12. The Big 12, to me, is one of the weaker conferences, so it is going to be interesting to see who can actually get out of that. Utah does have a big game next week. I believe they play Oklahoma State. Yep, they play at Oklahoma State next week. It's going to be the turning point of who wins the Big 12. I really think so, because I think those are the 2 best teams. Alec Bowman, who did an elite quarterback for Oklahoma State, and it's going to be exciting there. I trust the coaching of Utah just a little bit more. That's why I think Utah can win that game. But overall, I think it's going to be really crazy. It's going to be a crazy game. Okay, I want to touch on Texas UTSA a little bit. Texas, Quinn Ewers did go out. He's going to be out next week as well. And Arch Manning looked really, really good. He can really run the ball. I mean, he had a long rushing touchdown that was really impressive. And, Texas just didn't lose focus. They flat out dominated. Arch Manning was 9 of 12 in this game, 223, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, just dominated. And Quinn Ewers, before he went out, was really good too. He did have 1 interception, but 14 of 16 is really impressive to me. Texas dominating UTSAA like this is super impressive because, and let me just put this in context for you guys. Like, you probably don't know much about UTSA, right? Well, the past 2 years, they're the team that's covered the most games in college football. They really know how to win games. They were ranked last year for a while. They're actually a tough team, and Texas made them look like they're nothing. To me, Texas right now is the number 1 team in the country. They're dominant. So I'm really impressed with that aspect. Kentucky and Georgia. Let's go into it. Let's talk about it. Georgia looked terrible. This was such a boring game to watch. I was in West Lafayette with my buddy Drew, and we were watching this game, and we were just like, oh my gosh, this is awful. Georgia could not run the ball at all. Trevor Etienne barely got any separation going for him. Carson Beck was struggling to make easy throws. It was the weirdest win for Georgia like I've ever seen. And they're my champion. I have them winning it all, and I'm very concerned about this because this did not look good. They didn't look well coached. Their defense wasn't stopping Kentucky at all. Kentucky was running all over them. Their backup running back, I'm not going to say his name right, but I'm going to try, Demi Sumo Carney Jabba. I failed that completely, but whatever. He had 22 carries, 98 yards. Their backup running back, Jamartin Wilcox, had 9 carries, 43 yards. So, they were running the ball all over them. And Brock Vandergriff did not look good. He was 14 of 27, 114. It was just a really, really ugly game. And the fact of the matter is, if that's your number 1 team in the country and Carson Beck can't make the plays needed, it's tough, man. Georgia just really did not look good in this game. I wasn't impressed at all. And they got a schedule. They got a tough schedule. I'm pretty concerned with how Georgia's going to look and how it's going to continue here. They get a bye here, and then they play Alabama. So the fact that Georgia and Bama get byes is interesting because Bama's one of the more hotter teams, and we've seen Georgia just completely struggle. Completely struggle out the gate. So it's going to be interesting to see how Kirby takes that bye week and how Kalen DeBoer takes that bye week. It's Kalen DeBoer's biggest game he's had at Alabama this game. And Kirby Smart, this is one of his biggest regular season games we've ever seen him coach in. So it's going to be a really intriguing matchup, and I'm super excited to see what exactly happens. And Georgia dropped in the rankings for a reason. They dropped it too because they didn't look good at all. Texas deserves that 1 spot right now. So overall, to me, I am interested to see how Georgia adjusts, how they get better from this. But flat out, that was a terrible watch. Flat out terrible. Okay. I want to touch on Tennessee a second. 71-0 against Kent State. It's just unreal. Okay. They dominated this game. Dominated. And oh my gosh. And Nico looks so good. 173, a touchdown. Their running attack, Deshaun Bishop, along with Dylan Sampson. Oh my gosh, dude. It was so dominant from Tennessee. And I'm super impressed. I really think they're one of those teams that are just so scary. I was like, okay, you're doing their job. And then what they did to NC State, holy crap, dude. This is an elite team. I'm really excited for next week's game against Oklahoma. It's going to be really interesting. Again, it's another one of those tests like NC State was. NC State was ranked number 24 in the country, and they beat them 51-10. What are they going to do with number 15 in the country? That's what I'm excited about here. It's going to be a really exciting game. They go to Oklahoma, and then their next tough game will be at home against Alabama. And they also get Georgia. So, dude, the SEC is fun. It's going to be really, really fun. I'm excited to see what exactly transpires throughout the college football season.